This is Sporting Life.
Hello, Cheltenham 2024 is up and running, and this is our halfway house check-in to thrash out the developing themes and hopefully provide a look ahead to the final couple of days too. We'll get stuck into the day one conclusions in a moment, but first up, GC, we have this massive story unfolding in that Nicky Henderson, Britain's main trainer here at the festival, he's basically pulled up stumps. Jonbon and Shishkin, the headline withdrawals, but more to come, suspect, later in the week.
Yeah, morning all. Hope everyone's doing well. First of all, an apology for missing Monday's preview of days 1 and 2. I got my times mixed up and I was out with the dog. Still think Dave Ord should have done more to get hold of me. He should have sent out a search party. Something. So that's a terrible job by him.
Thanks for the non-messages.
But no, it's tough on all Henderson's team. I got a message this morning, actually, from someone who was down there saying, looks like Jonbon's going to be out. And I always go, right, how do you know? How much do you trust your source? I said, who's your source? He said, a stable lad. And I said, well, who's stable lad? He said, Jonbon's stable lad. So that gave a broad hint that the expulsion tool was coming out. And it's not something for levity. It's hard on all those owners, I think, in particular. Henderson's been through similar before and worse. It's tough on him, really tough on the owners and the grooms. But it looks like there's something quite badly wrong in that yard. I was at Cheltenham yesterday and I watched that Jericho de Repenay stop like he was in big trouble. I watched those two mares, and particularly Mary's Rock, who is not known for running bad races. Two mares pulled up in the mares hurdle, and Iberico Lord, fresh on the back of a Betfair hurdle win that had been working out a treat, he ran a lifeless race. So clearly the evidence of yesterday and several days before had given a strong suggestion that all wasn't well. And Shishkin out of the Gold Cup, Jonbon out of the Champion Chase, and all in all, when you've got a situation, lads, where already you're thinking various hot favourites, they don't have the main rival to beat because that main rival might be in an alternative race. It's magnified again when the most successful British yard in Cheltenham history is now off games.
David, we did see, obviously, Lucia from the Henderson yard. She ran a mighty race, finishing third to State Man, who the winner may well have been under par a little bit himself, but it must be so hard for the whole team to kind of, these are what Henderson's saying on Wednesday morning as we record, seemingly fit horses outwardly, and he's willing to not run them at the Cheltenham Festival. This is one of Britain's sort of major yards that really does target the meeting above all others. It can't be easy at all.
Well, I think that was the key problem with so many of those that run badly yesterday, isn't it? Is that there's just no outward signs pre-race that they were going to underperform to the extent that they did. All these the kind of pre-race checks that all the horses have been undergoing, they were all coming out fine. I think that's one of the differences with Shishkin, isn't it? He's one that is a non-runner in the Gold Cup because he's already showing signs of not everything being 100%. So, I mean, I don't know whether it's the intention to keep carrying out further checks on some of the other horses that are entered up, because obviously the likes of Sergino, there's a really interesting one that was runner-up in the Martin Park last year that takes his chance in that race again, whose name escapes me at the minute. But he'd have been very interesting for a lot of people. That's the one. We'll just have to. It's a bit of a waiting game to see what develops later in the week, but it certainly had a real knock-on effect to the competitiveness of the festival with Jonbon and Shishkin, who looked two of the real sort of dangers to some of the Willie Mullins hot pots, and it's obviously making the festival much less interesting as a result.
It's not intended as a dig at Nicky Henderson or any other trainer, this, but it does highlight the value of running your horses when opportunities arise through the season. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket and wait for this 1 week and then something goes wrong like this, wow, what an anticlimax for all concerned.
Yeah, well, Willie made that very point at the Dublin Racing Festival with Galopin des Champs. People were saying, oh, how come you decided to run here and not go straight to Cheltenham? he said exactly that. You know, these are horses we're dealing with. We don't know what's coming down the line, so he's fit and he's well. Why not let him take his chance? This is a good pot too. So it goes exactly to what you were saying there, GC.
Speaking of Willie Mullins, let's reflect briefly on day one. There were papers in the air, Billy, as Lossiemouth brought the fairly popular treble, I'd say, in the Mares Hurdle. Crowd numbers apparently holding up pretty well, but not all plain sailing, not just in the car park, but one or two issues elsewhere as well. How do you just reflect on day one, Billy?
Yeah, sure. From a Willie Mullins point of view, he had a pretty good day. Almost everything went right for him. I think he'd have probably maybe would have expected to win the first, but Mystical Power in particular ran really well in that. And apart from that, everything went according to plan. Gaelic Warrior was a really impressive winner of the Arkle. He posted a pretty high time form figure. It's not as high as what El Fabiolo achieved last year, or even Shishkin a few years ago, but he's certainly up towards the upper end of Arkle winners in recent years. The hood seemed to make a massive difference to him. I've never known a hood to sort out a horse's jumping before, but he jumped straighter than I've ever seen him jump. He was really impressive. State Man, loads of people are crabbing State Man. I thought he won with a good bit up his sleeve, to be honest. I don't think that result was ever in doubt. I think if you look at the race again, Paul, he was only going through the motions from the last. He cruised into contention. Look, he had the option of going in the inside, turning for home. He had so much horse underneath him, he just pulled out and went around the outside. I thought he won that very easily. But there was no Constitution Hill, so he's not going to get the credit he deserves. But I read a very interesting thing on Twitter yesterday, actually. Stateman has now won more grade ones than Constitution Hill has run on the track. Stateman has 9 grade ones, Constitution Hill has run 8 times, which is, that's a fairly damning statistic in its own right. And then, like you said,
Billy, are they the same age?
Yeah. And Lossiemouth was a really impressive winner of the Mayor's Hurdle. Loads of people saying, oh, why didn't she run in the champion? If you look at the Mayor's Hurdle, she beat Tell Me Something Girl back into second. Like, Tell Me Something Girl is a long way off champion hurdle standard. Lossiemouth, I've no doubt, can take the step up again next year. But at this stage, I think Willie was absolutely justified in keeping her in that race. So, yeah, good day all round for Closoughton. Great day for Ireland, obviously. 6 of the 7 winners. And, we'll be expecting to continue that team throughout the week.
David, just on wind it back to the Sky Bet Supreme, I thought obviously Mythical Power seemed to come there with a winning run, didn't quite see it out after the last. Slade still put up a good performance. How would that rank with you in terms of Sky Bet Supremes in recent seasons?
Yeah, well, did preview looking ahead to the Supreme, and I made the point that Slade Steele, who was top rated going into the race, was sort of a good £7 or £8 below the standard normally required to win the race. And I think to a certain extent, that's what we did see. Slade Steele probably has to go down as a below par winner. The field haven't got that strung out. And before we go on too much about the race, probably ought to mention the ground and John Pullen, the clerk of the course. He's had a little bit of a nightmare, I think, here. He's had the going stick readings, which were as low as I've ever seen at Cheltenham, which suggested it was heavy. And then we've seen the race times here, and there's no doubt the ground is heavy. I think the winning time for the Supreme is 4:13.8. The second slowest this century was when Shishkin won on what time form called soft ground, and that was running 4:08. And it just carried on throughout the card. You're looking at every single winning time, and it's the lowest winning time recorded for every race over the last 25 years. It's almost amusing, but you look at the 4 miler as was, and when that race was won over 4 miles, 11 of the times were quicker than what they covered the 3 mile 6 over yesterday. So, and there's absolutely no doubt that was heavy ground, and I do have plenty of sympathy for those people that have been having a little bet on it and deciding on what the ground would be for the opening race. They've had their pockets picked.
The betting aside, GC, why don't they want to call it heavy? Where's the shame in calling it heavy? Everyone knows the water table's been high. It's
a bizarre reluctance. I can only think that it may be trying to persuade people not to withdraw if they've got any doubts on that score. I would be very surprised if the going change overnight into Wednesday is a true reflection. I would confidently expect it to be a heavy track for Wednesday. A couple of quick points as someone who's been there, who was there on day one. I really enjoyed it. Reason I really enjoyed it, I love getting out in spring. I love elite sporting performers and seeing them close up. And we saw that in multiple races yesterday. But this is true. Believe me when I say this is true. There was a lack of anything raucous in what is traditionally one of the most raucous sports arenas on the planet. It just wasn't there. No ole-oles or people charging around, elated, celebrating, etc. The sense at how Mullins marshals his troops and gets them in the right race, I thought was fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But I think for most people, it was this weird spectacle of hundreds and thousands of people holding the Guinness in a plastic glass. It's like watching a surgical operation, performed to an extremely high level. But yeah, that's how it was set up, and that's how it panned out. And most of all, perhaps, coming away with the lingering fear that those who run the show don't think that any changes are necessary. I'm really convinced that some changes are necessary, and we don't need to go into too much detail, but in modifying certain races, you get double or even treble whammy. Let's say you bring the novices handicap chase back. That's a highly competitive, very popular race, but the knock-on effect for the Turners and the Brown Advisory, the Arkle, is substantial. The Mares Hurdle, do something with that. If you're, a lossy mouth connection, you don't have to run there. Either run with a big penalty in the Mares Hurdle or go for the Champion Hurdle. The potential knock-on effects for some modification is terrific. I don't think that the meeting needs major surgery, not a bit of it. But some minor surgery could have significant enhancements for that meeting. But all in all, really, really enjoyed it. But I do think keep a close eye on the results this week, gents. If the bankers and the well-fancied handicappers keep going in, this could be a really damaging week for British racing's finances. The business model is based on major, major profits at weeks like this, and the way it might go could make for worrying reading from a levy point of view. And as Billy said before, they're loaded. Ireland are absolutely loaded with fancied horses. And I said it last week when we were in Leeds, those really good horses, those elite Mullins horses, they've not got a bit in hand, have they? They've got open lengths in hand. And if they get smooth sailing through the race, they'll deliver.
Well, let's move things on to a look ahead now to Thursday and Friday, the final 2 days of the festival. A Grade 1 start to the day and not a Willie Mullins hot pot in sight, although I think obviously we got a decent field for the Turners novices chase, with Factor File maybe scaring a few off from the Brown Advisory. It's an open race. DJ, what do you make of the Turners on day 3?
Yeah, well, obviously, from a personal point of view, anyone that's heard me on the previews for Sports in Life, disappointed to see Grey Dawning turning out here. And he's a fairly short price for me, considering that he's dropping back in trip, even with the ground going to be on the testing side. And I was a little bit surprised as well to see Facile Vega quite as short as what he is. I think, for all his reputation, he's just a horse that keeps coming up a little bit short in the very best of company. And obviously he was disappointing at Christmas at Leopardstown. And then I just thought he was shown to be not quite up to this level in the Arkle. And I mean, that form stood up pretty well, didn't it, behind the really impressive Gaelic Warrior yesterday, with Founder 52nd and Ilete Tomps third, who just wasn't quite big enough to get over the Cheltenham fences, was he? I don't think so. I don't mind taking Facile Vega on here, and I do come back to Ginny's Destiny, who I've liked all along. He's done nothing wrong at all since he's joined Paul Nicholls. Obviously needed that reappearance. I mean, GC could tell you all about how
fitness issue.
Yeah, his physicality was ahead of that. So, but he's gone 3 on the bounce since, and the win at Cheltenham last time on Trials Day in that time for novices handicap chase, that's a race that traditionally works out well, is often a decent pointer to the Cheltenham Festival. And, there's horses that have already come out of that and won nicely. Prairie Wolf, I think, won next time out, and Blow Your Wad has as well. And I think Ginny's Destiny, if he gets into that rhythm out in front, he's just going to take plenty of passing.
Billy, what's the counterpoint here with Fossil Vega? Is there a strong counter? Are we expecting? Is he sitting on a big performance, stepping up in distance, or are the Irish clutching at straws a bit here in this race?
He could be sitting in a big performance, Matt. I think we haven't seen the best of him over fences yet, and I think stepping up to this trip could certainly suit him. I also think the fact that the ground has gone as soft as it has is another positive for Facile Vega. He's only run on heavy ground twice. Once was in the Champion Bumper, and the other time was at Navan in his beginner's chase when he was so impressive. So I think that'll suit him. Like I said, I think the step up and trip will definitely suit. And his run in the Irish Sharkle, as DJ pointed out, looks a good bit better now than it did even at the time. He wasn't that far off those horses. And if he can, if the step up and trip does bring about some improvement, it's going to put him right in the mix. But I do think he's probably taking on the best of the British novice chasers. I think Ginny's Destiny, Grey Dawning, and even throwing Iroko into the bunch, who was so impressive on his chasing debut, I think they're probably the pick of the British. So I think Facile Vega will put it up to them, but I'm not necessarily going to be backing him at the price he is at the moment.
I'm second on the top of the market here. I'm going to throw a few quid each way at JLo, who I thought might have a bit more to offer for Venetia Williams on the back of that second in the City-Hours. GC, have you got a strong view?
1 point win, Grey Dawning. I think there'll be plenty of 3-1 around on race morning, and I just think he's got a lot of what you look for in a winner of a race like this. I am scared of Facile Vega. I've always rated him, and I think jumping at slightly slower speed over a longer trip might help him. I thought they might try some cheap pieces, but I think in terms of proper Grade 1 horses in this race, I think it's a fairly small core myself. Facile Vega's one. Ginny's Destiny's one. Thing you have to remember about Ginny's Destiny, it's not what you think I'm going to say. Do not let Cobden do what he did in this race on Stage Start last year, when he got a lovely softish lead in front. And, he's a good horse. We know that, Stage Star, but he was given a chance to take advantage and did so. It's not impossible that Ginny's Destiny will get something similar. But I think that Grey Dawning would have beaten him before Christmas at Cheltenham, giving him £2 and with a bad blunder 2 out. So I'll take my chances with Grey Dawning. I should sort of have a conscience saver on Facile Vega, but I don't think I will. They're both at the head of the market. So it's Grey Dawning for me, one of probably half a dozen races that I'm really keen on over days 3 and day 4.
What do we make of Iroko here? He's a remarkable prize considering his preparation, isn't he? It's one of them that I was thinking, well, he's this sort of price because it's non-runner, no bet, and then he'll drift once, it's clear that he is going to turn up or not. But he's still pretty solid, isn't he?
I think that should make a good point here, David. I agree with that. And I was with a mate of mine, good mate of mine, who is a long-term betting industry veteran, with a couple of his pals who are quite plugged in the same way. And they say that that price is because that the stable have been extremely keen on him. I'm not particular. I think after that long break and just on what he achieved at Warwick leaves him with certainly £7 to £10 to find. But it seems like the message from the stable may have got out to the owner and beyond in terms of keeping that price held up.
Yeah, let's move on to the Ryanair Chase. It could be Cobden from the front again here, GC, could it? With Stage Style, we know absolutely loves this new course, and Nichols will have him fighting fresh for the big race in the Ryanair.
It could be. This is wide open because we had 5 or 6 horses within £3 or £4 of each other. Billy can touch on Banbridge and the ground issue in a moment or two. I've got 2 I'm interested in here. Protectorate and Conflated. They both come out pretty well at the ratings. They're both, I think, in really good form. I know Conflated's got those 2 U's, but he was trying to go with Galopin not once but twice. He was about to finish second behind Allaho in this race 2 years ago, I think, when he tipped up. But Protectorate would probably be the one I'm even more interested in. I think he's run high-class numbers the last 2 or 3 starts. And I think these conditions, really soft ground and being right on the pace from an early stage over this trip should suit him. It's wide open, but I think with Protectorate and Conflated, one or both should give me a good run there.
And Billy, it's a leveler for the ground is a real leveler for Banbridge, isn't it? And you look at the Irish contingent as a whole here. Capodanno maybe comes into it as well. What do you make of him?
I think the ground is an issue for him as well, Matt. I think he's a better horse on quicker ground. Even when he won at Cheltenham the last day, Time Farm described it as good to soft. So maybe dropping back in trip, it'll make it more of a test. It'll suit him. But I certainly would be. I think they'd prefer better ground for him. It's a big issue for Banbridge. He's clearly a better horse when he can hear his hooves rattle. So that's going to be an issue for him. It's also an issue for, I think, Stage Star. I think Paul Nicholls was blaming the ground the last day at Cheltenham as one of the reasons why he ran so badly. So I think the ground is going to have a major factor on this race. I'd agree with GC. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Conflated turned out to be the best of the Irish. You can pretty much ignore his unseats the last day. Both at the last fence, both getting tired. They were just, they were tired mistakes, but dropping back to 2.5 will really suit him. And you can't rule out Envoy Allen, who won the race last year. He's probably in the same sort of form this time around, and we know how Henry de Bromhead's horses just seem to come alive at this meeting. So he'll run well. Not a race I have a strong view on, Matt, but like I said, the ground is going to make a massive difference to this race.
Do you give anything else a squeak here, David?
No, I'm very much with the GC, and I think Protectorat is better the day material, possibly even better the week material for me. I do really like his chances here when you look at what he's taking on. He's been running really well all season, but against proper Gold Cup horses, and I just think this looks something of a drop in class. And he's never really been a slow horse. He's always taken a strong hold in his races, and I think riding him aggressively over this kind of trip on this sort of ground, it's sort of every box ticks for him. And we know what Harry Skelton can do from the front, and you wouldn't want him to be too aggressive on him. But if he gets him into that kind of rhythm, I can just see him being very, very difficult to pass. And I'm really keen on him. Double figures, like I say, I think is a very big price.
Yeah. Dan Skelton's north from 30 odd with Chase at the festival, but no worries, we'll have broken that dog when Grey Dawning wins the first.
He's not had a great
London
one at the
bosses.
festival either, has he? He's had to rely on his handicappers to this point, so that would be a big breakthrough for Dan, who's obviously had some relief, I suppose, this week with the news regarding the case. GC.
He's been sleeping well.
Yeah, he's been sleeping a little bit better, I think that's fair to say, and they've nicely got that cleared up just before the festival. So good luck to Dan and the rest of the team. The other feature that shares main race status on Thursdays, the Paddy Power Stayers Hurdle, and this is a bit more of a lopsided market here. Billy, you kick us off because we've got a horse here, the disgraceful Tiapu, who's only had the one run this season for Gordon Elliott. You certainly wouldn't be put off when you look back at Irish Point's run in the Champion Hurdle, and this was the nominated target for Tiapu, the strong stayer.
We talked about the ground for the Ryanair, Matt, and the ground has absolutely come right for this horse in the Stayers Hurdle. He wants it as soft as you can get it. He's a proper mudlark as Tiapu, so they're going to be delighted with the way the ground has come up. Obviously, they've kept him, they've minded him for this race all year. He's only had the one run. That was the plan. And yes, like I said, they couldn't be happier. He's a very short price, Matt. He could well win. I certainly wouldn't. If anybody wants to wade into him at that price, I wouldn't put them off, but I won't be backing him at that price. I think it's going to be a proper slog, this race. We have a lot of the old reliables, the old timers, the Paisley Parks, and those horses. I see Champ has actually been taken out. But I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Noble Yates went very close in this, Matt. He doesn't have much experience over hurdles. I thought he won well the last day at Cheltenham. Cobden back on, he'll know him a bit better now. And like I said, just the way the race is going to develop, I think it'll really suit him because it's going to turn into a proper test of stamina. Sir Gerhard is a classy individual. I think there'd be big question marks about him getting the trip in these conditions. Horses like Flooring Porter, Home by the Lee, even Sir de Burley from last year, they've all got chances. But yeah, I think of the outside betting without Tehupo, I think maybe Noble Yates would go for me.
Do you get the angle for the cheap pieces first time, Noble Yates, Billy? That's not a shocker, is it?
Oh, not at all. I mean, look at the way he ran the last issue. He was off the bridle pretty much the whole way around. I think that's just him. So yeah, that wouldn't put me off in the slightest. GC,
I thought maybe Crambo had the beating of him on the line through those horses that obviously ran at Ascot and in the Cleve. He's a lurker. He's only a 7-year-old. Is he a true danger to Tiapu, do you think?
I think, like Billy says, there are tons of options here. I think this is a field of horses who are very closely matched and can beat each other on the day. You look at the Cleve Hurdle, there are about 5 horses covered by a couple of lengths. This is a different stamina test, more searching stamina test. I probably won't have a bet here. It wouldn't shock me if old Dashel Thrasher ran well at a really big price. He's held by a couple of three of these, but not by much.
Got his ground.
He'll grind and grind and grind, but it's one of those. It's a fun race and it's a good class race, but I don't think it's a race that you can say, well, I've got this down to a couple. It's just not that type of contest for me. But you and David may disagree. I don't know.
I've not found one here personally. I thought, obviously, we've not mentioned Sir Gerard, but he's another lingering in the background there. Could sprout wings over the distance, reinvent himself, I suppose. David, have you got a view?
Yeah, I've got it down to a couple. No, no. There is one that I do like, and I think is overpriced, and it's Home by the Lee, who obviously doesn't look like he's coming into the race in quite the same form as last year, but I think you can excuse that. I don't think he's been suited by making the run-in, and he's a horse, I think, we talk about first-time headgear for other horses in the race. I think this horse wearing first-time blinkers, you could easily see the way that he goes through his races, how that could definitely do something positive for him. And he wasn't beaten far in the race last year, just under 4 lengths. And
he nearly fell. He nearly fell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a shuddering mistake that, he sort of comfortably there in third, going well, and then just sort of left his back legs behind, dropped right out. And it's one of them mistakes that you wouldn't have been surprised to have seen him pulled up, such was the ground that he lost. But like I say, if you think about how he ran there, I think he's overpriced. You have to draw a line through these 2 races this year, but making the running in small fields without headgear wouldn't have suited. And I think a bigger field, a pace to run at. We know that this is going to be run at a decent gallop with Florin Porter in there, don't we? And I think Home by the Lee won't be too far away, and hopefully Florin Porter can give him a decent lead for a long way into the race.
Yeah, if ever a horse was crying out for headgear, it was Home by the Lee. If you saw him at Leopardstown last day, he absolutely hated making the running, So I think, blinkers are a very positive addition for him.
Right, let's wrap up day 3. Billy, I'll stick with you because you're going to talk us through the Ryanair Mares Novices Hurdle and any other handicap fancies that you might have on the day. Brighter Days Ahead has been, she's been absolutely hammered in this market. She's clearly one of Gordon Elliott's strongest fancies of the week. Does she get it done here on soft ground?
Soft ground will help. It'll probably make it into more of a test, but I really like Jade de Grugy, Matt. I think it's not a 2-horse race by any manner of means. Dice Sardinos has to be in the conversation as well. Like you said, Brighter Days Ahead has been a talking horse for a long time, and I do think the ground will play in her favour because I think she really wants a longer trip than this. I've been really impressed with Jade de Grugy. She's done nothing wrong on her 2 starts, and as well, she's won over 2.5 as well, so the trip isn't an issue. I love the way she jumps. I just think she's a really, really smart prospect. She's a time for a large P in her rating. I'm going to side with her. In the other races, I don't really have a view on the part-times final. It's not a race that I'm planning on having a bet in. I think the Irish are very strong in the plate. I think Gordon Sampalician is a horse that you have to give a chance to, but he's been well found in the market. But in the Kim Muir, I do like an Irish horse in the Kim Muir. There's a big Irish field. I was kind of thinking, I know the way you're thinking. I thought it was a bit of a sneaky one there all the year, and then you see the price he's gone. So I couldn't back him at that price. I think he'll run well, but I couldn't back him at that price. But I do like a horse of Paul Nolan's called Daily Present. He's one of the least exposed horses in the field. He was a decent novice hurdler a couple of years ago, and then got injured at the Punchestown Festival. He missed quite a bit of time, so they've been building him up gradually over fences this year. He won a handicap at Down Royal the last day, first time tongue tie on him that day, first time at 3 miles, and the form of that race has worked out quite nicely. The horse that finished second was second in the Leinster National at Naas last weekend. I think the additional 2 furlongs of this race will really suit him. He's ridden by a guy called Jack Hendrick, who is a name that won't be very familiar to a lot of British racegoers. Hasn't ridden that many winners on the track, but he's ridden about 70 point-to-point winners in Ireland, so he has loads of experience. He's a very, very capable jockey. He's claiming £5, which is no bad thing either. And I think at a double-figure price, and he's only just a double-figure price now because there's been a bit of money for him, I do like Daily Present. I think he'll give you a great run for your money.
Billy, just while we're on that race, I was just hoping to check in your view on this, where it all began, a winner for Gordon Elliott in the trial, the Grand National Trial, and aiming to be a first festival winner for Barry O'Neill, who's 0 from 32 at the festival, but he's had a few places over the years. He sort of feels like an anomaly that he's not won at the Fez yet.
I didn't realise he hadn't. I would have been fairly sure now that Barry
Yeah.
O'Neill would have ridden the winner, because he's ridden plenty of fancied ones down through the years. Yeah, where it all began, you can certainly make a case for him. He won over 3.5 at Punchestown the last day, stays really well. I thought he jumped particularly well that day, and the ground won't be an issue for him. So he certainly goes there with a live chance. Yeah, I wouldn't put anyone off him.
GC, let's look back to the Mayor's Novice. Are you Willie, Gordon, Fergal, or even Jeremy Scott?
I think I'm a Gordon man there. I've been really impressed by Brighter Days Ahead, and I think that the heavy rain we've had will be a plus for her. But when you get and it looks a three-way goal, that, doesn't it? I know that Jeremy Scott Golden Aces, it looks pretty smart, but she was blown away by Isart Enos in the Aintree bumper last spring. So it looks a three-way goal, and I don't think bookies are going to make too many mistakes. I don't think I'll be there on Thursday, but that's a race I'd love to make my final choice after seeing the big three in the paddock. I think that might be the sort of thing that might sway me in a race like that. But we haven't got the day 2 results to hand here, but I sort of felt for Gordonelli again on day 1. Plenty of runners, and look how many of them ran really well. Irish Point, obviously, Nadawi, very good third in the Boodles, which was absolutely dominated by the Irish. The Goffer ran well till his stamina gave out. I found a 50 run a really good race, and Firefox ran very well. So lots of places on the podium, but I'm sure he'll snag a gold, and perhaps it'll be Brighter Days Ahead to do it.
David, you got a lovely each-way double with Protectorate and Home by the Lee. What's making up the day 3 Yankee?
Yeah, well, there are a couple, I think. Gway Cool is the one that I like for the Potemps. I've been banging the drum for this race ever since she finished second at the DRF.
Ted Walsh's mare, yeah?
That's right, yeah. Strong traveller. The way that this race is going to be run should suit, and just think, it's one of those races where they're paying the 5 and 6 places. That was Skybet going 8 by the looks of it. So she's going to be very hard to kick out the 8, I'd be hoping.
How many marks out of 10 for the pronunciation of that one, Billy?
I'd give him a 7. Yeah, that's not too bad. He was obviously listening to me last week when I picked up Ollie Bell and his pronunciation, which got about a 3.
I can assure you I had to go back and listen to the commentary to make sure I didn't make too much of a fool of myself. So, yeah. And the other one comes in, was it the Plate it's called? And it's this Theatre Man who has form that ties in very closely with Ginny's Destiny from the Timeform race. So hopefully he'll give that form a boost earlier in the day. But we know all about novices in these staying handicaps. There was a novice that snared the 3-mile race on day 1, and Theatre Man just looks to have a lot in his favour. He's only had 3 runs over fences. All 3 have been really good efforts in half-decent handicaps. And like I say, that Cheltenham run last time is a strong race. Harry Cobden takes over from Harry Bannister, which, no disrespect to Harry Bannister, but Cobden on for the first time seems a positive to me. And I think Theatre Man's going to run really well.
I just noticed that jockey booking. That's tough on Harry Bannister, but you're right. You wouldn't be dismayed if you were a Theatre Man fan, would you, for Cobden?
No.
Saddle up this Cheltenham with ITV7 because there's over £1 million in jackpot prizes waiting to be won. Anyone can win. Jordan from Chesterfield can vouch for that. He took home £500,000. And this year, it could be your turn. Simply pick 7 winners to win. It's completely free to enter via the ITV7 website or app. 18 plus and UK only. T's and C's apply.
And let's move on to Friday. The Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup is obviously the feature everyone's desperate to find out your selections for this. You mentioned extra places, David. The Skybet are paying 4 places on the Gold Cup, so we'll no doubt come to potential each-way angles in this race in a second. But let's talk Galloping Deschamps, Billy. He is a clear standout. He's even money with Skybet as we speak. What sort of price would he be for you? Would be a bet, in short?
I think if you could get anything odds against is a bet in this race. Evens or odds against, I think he'll win, Matt. I really, the more the week goes on, the stronger I'm feeling about it. And certainly the way the ground has gone, I think soft ground is a major plus to this horse. I think he won the Gold Cup last year without being at his best. I think the way the race panned out and the way he jumped and everything, I think he got through, and like his class got him through and he won that race. I think he's better this year. Certainly his performance at Leopardstown at Christmas was as good a 3 Mile Chase performance as you're going to see. And if he turns up in that sort of form, with the ground the way it is, with the way the race is likely to be run, there should be loads of pace in the race. I don't expect him to make the running. He will be handy. But, you know, I just think everything is falling right in and is in his favour this time. I think he's going to put up a serious performance, and I can't see him beating Matt.
David, let's say he runs to 170 odd. This Shishkin being out does leave a hole, doesn't it? Because he was potentially capable of running up to that sort of figure. Is there anything else in the race that is going to go 170, 175 to beat Gallop and the Shop here?
It's possible, and it's a race I want to do a little bit more on nearer the time, because you want to see how long this soft, or as we're calling it, heavy ground is lingering.
A bit more
around.
rain forecast, isn't there? More spots of rain Thursday into Friday, and
so,
maybe on race day itself.
You know, I mean, Nassalam, you wouldn't really give a chance to strictly on the form, but that Welsh National run is a race that you could stick any figure you like on, you know, based on it being heavy ground and such a wide margin win. So I think he's more interesting all of a sudden than what he was looking before we had all the rain earlier in the week. And I think the rain obviously makes Jerry Colombe and Gentleman's Game interesting, the 2 Robcour horses. So, and as well, I think, you know, certainly Jerry Colombe will be ridden to sort of come there late, which is perhaps sort of the right way to try and beat Galopin des Champs. So yeah, I think I'd be now beginning to look at this stage at the absolute out and out sluggers that are going to really serve it up in the Gold Cup, because it does look like it's going to be shaping into a real test of stamina.
Yeah,
is that what you're looking for, GC? Stamina?
Yeah, I think Nassalam has the big price tipsters. I think it's a moth to a flame job. That I think if it continues to be really, you know, grinding ground, then lots of people are likely to put him up. I could see him going off more like 20 than 40, to be honest, and running that way. It's very difficult, as David said, to rate a performance like Chepstow, but it was pretty striking, wasn't it? The way he bounded clear, and the further he goes, the better he is. So I could see him running well at a big price, but I agree with Billy. It's funny when you know, when you're in the media, you get to know how the game's played, and you know that certain people they're going to take on horses who don't appear to have many flaws. But if you say, I'm going to take him on, I'm going to lay him, you've then got to give a reason for it. And I've heard it said that, you know, he's been in battles and he's been in wars and what have you. He's had 3 races all season, a rusty John Durkan run, a dynamite performance at Leopardstown over Christmas. And last time out, he eased his way clear of Fast or Slow in the Irish Gold Cup under hand riding. He didn't have a hard race. So if you're looking to oppose the horse, just say, I'm not up for taking even money in a Gold Cup. And that's fine. But I can't see too many chinks in Galopin des Champs' armour. And I agree with Billy bang on that these conditions might enable him to put on a right show. And this is, Ollie Bell touched on this line last week when we were in Leeds. He said that this could be the day when he goes from being a really good horse, a star horse within the racing fraternity, to being sort of a front page attraction in the, not quite in the Courtauld mold, but in the sporting household name fold. You know, I do think he has that potential going well.
And GC, earlier in the week, I think you were still sort of holding some sort of chance with Brave Man's Game. It was obviously last year's second. Now
I'd be a little less confident based on the conditions, Matt. You won't be surprised to hear me say that because we know there's probably not a horse in the race will jump better. He'll jump really well and he'll travel very strongly. But if you have a look at last year's Gold Cup, when he ran an excellent second, you couldn't really say he didn't get home. He was beaten 7 lengths by a terrific horse. But last year they clocked 6:45.46 on officially soft ground. Now, get this, 6:45.6, I don't think they'll break 7 minutes on Friday. I think I'd bet with some confidence that it's going to be upwards of 7 minutes, and I'm not sure that sort of grind is going to play to Braveman's game strengths.
Right, I'm going to wrap up this Gold Cup with a quick blast through all the others. So I'm going to come round. So I'm going to go David. Korak Rambler is the Grand National winner. Soft ground slog's going to suit him. Any chance of hitting the frame?
Yeah, he's got a good chance of hitting the frame because of the way that he's going to be ridden and the way that the race is going to pan out, I think.
Billy, fast or slow, I see, has come back with a W1 on the race card. He's a minor wind surgery since we last saw him. Any chance at all of getting another one over on Galopin Des Champs?
I thought all along, Matt, that he was Galopin Des Champs' biggest danger, but I do think the ground is a major negative. It's not that he doesn't handle soft ground, he does, but I think he's better on quicker ground. And obviously the fact that he's had a little bit of wind surgery as well, not ideal in conditions like this. So I'd be not as confident about him finishing second or third as I was a week ago.
GC Mouse, the Mouse, says the gentleman's game's as slow as a boat, but might just be able to run on when others have had enough. Is his form up to this? This is a horse that beat Braveman's game at the start of the year. We've not seen him since.
He's only had 3 steeple chases. He's come a long way in a short chasing career. I'd love to see him run well. For Mouse Norris, as Racing TV billed him yesterday, which is even better. Mouse Morris is a great name, but Mouse Norris is even better. But particularly because one of his breeders is Mrs. Mo Luck, Nick Luck's mum, late mum, and she would have been beside herself with joy to see something like that tomorrow. She's not here anymore, but I'd love to see that horse run well. But he's going in as a pretty raw soldier, isn't he? After just 3 chases, that's a hard school to be going into on the back of 3 chases. One was a 4-runner race, one was a 6-runner race. You know, it's a different school altogether tomorrow after a long break.
And David's mentioned both the Robco horses, but Billy, if I could just come to you on Jerry, he went off 5 to 4 for last year's Brown Advisory. He's won 2 of his 3 starts since, finished second to the favourite last time out. Is this a horse that's still sitting on a big performance? Is he underestimated? He's gone out to 10 to 1. I think this is going to be Ben Linfoot's fancy in the race without wanting to give too many spoilers. Any chance?
Certainly a 10 to 1, Matt. He's a live each way shot at 10 to 1. Yeah. I couldn't see him reversing Leopardstown form with Galopin Des Champs. I think something would have to go majorly wrong with Galopin Des Champs for Jerry Colombe to turn around that form.
But different tracks, though, aren't they? Really different tracks.
Yeah, different track, and extra distance will help him as well. I think Jerry Colombe, we saw it last year in the novice chase, that he just does, he maybe lacks a little bit of tactical speed. He got outpaced. When the taps were turned on last year, he couldn't go with them, and you'd be concerned that the same might happen in the Gold Cup. Now the fact that the ground is really soft will probably help him in that regard, and the fact that they're going an extra 2 furlongs will help him. Like I said, I don't see him beating Galopin Des Champs, but I do think at that price, yeah, you'd have to think that he's a real lively trade contender.
David, Hewitt won the King George. King George winners used to go off about 2 to 1 for the Gold Cup by default. This was obviously a horse that prefers much better ground. Is that really going to count against him?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing for me is that he was pretty badly flattered in the King George and sort of run well above himself there. He ran in the Gold Cup last year, didn't he? He was beaten when he came down 2 out there, and I'd be very surprised if he was there at the business end this time.
Go on, let's stick with you. L'Homme Pressé was hot property after he came back and won at Lingfield, beating your seriously strong Ryanair Fancy Protectorat in the Fleur de Lis. He's since run right-handed over a shorter distance at Ascot. He is back up in trip. We know he handles Cheltenham. He loves soft ground. What's not to like?
He's just not good enough, I don't think. Could squeak a place in the first 4 at best, but I don't think there's much upside to his win price, that's for sure.
Billy, the Monkfish is back. He could have run in the Paddy Power Stayers Hurdle. He runs here instead. Willie Mullins is keen to roll the dice whilst he's fit and well, and we saw him in action at the end of January when looking pretty good terms with himself over hurdles, winning at Garum. What do you make of him at the moment?
It's very difficult to know. I mean, he certainly would be a unique Gold Cup winner, and that he hasn't run over fences for 3 years. So that's not your typical preparation. Obviously, we haven't seen him. His appearances on the racetrack have been few and far between since he looked a really, a couple of years ago, you'd have said, absolutely, this is a Gold Cup horse in the making when he won the novice chase, the 3 mile novice chase here a few seasons back. the wheels have come off since. They've done really well to get him back, and he did look in good heart at Gordon the last day in a 3 mile hurdle. No, he beat Somerville Boy, who's certainly well into the veteran stage himself. But we do know that he loves the ground. You couldn't see him being good enough to win, Matt. Maybe he'll run into a place, but that's the best you could hope for.
And to round it off, GC, you have got the whacker, the real whacker, in a first-time advisor for Pat Neville, winner of last year's Brown Advisory, beat Jerry Colomb, not at his best so far this year, but second in the Cotswold.
Yeah, ran well, and he rallied. You know, he did stick around and was coming back at the line. He's not really for me. I think he'll be right on the front end, and he promises to be one of the horses who makes this a really searching test. So good luck to Patrick Neville, small stable. Talked about Mouse Norris. He's only got the second best name in this race because it's Patrick Neville, one of the owners. Mr. Mann, I think he's the Cork nightclub owner, big character. And then Doofus, someone called Doofus is one of the owners. And then Dennis Price. So the whacker is the whacker. He'll go off and help make it a good test with the visor on. You know, when you get to a fourth day, deep ground track, a lot of things are possible. But a peak form Galopin is, you know, he's a bit too good for these, isn't he? I think.
That sums up our Gold Cup section beautifully. Good luck wherever your pin lands in the Cheltenham Gold Cup this year. We are now going to look ahead to the JCB Triumph Hurdle. That kicks off Friday's card. And as I speak, I've not got the jockey bookings, but if anyone could rapidly find them, that would be absolutely superb, unless they're not in yet. But obviously, massive question marks over Sergino. Will he or won't he run? Maybe we shouldn't dwell on that, given when people might be listening to this, and developments may well have changed the picture. But as it stands, Billy, there's a lot of interest here from Willie Mullins. He seems to have just sort of thrown everything at Sergino in a hope to try and get him beat, including Salvatore Mundi, who makes his debut for the yard, having been second to Sergino at Totoi.
He has, and you just mentioned jockey bookings. He's going to be ridden by Brian Hayes, which I don't think many people would have envisaged. So Paul Townend rides Storm Heart. Brian Hayes is on Salvatore Mundi. Mark Walsh rides Majborough, which we would have expected. Rachel Blackmore rides High Wind. Sean O'Keefe rides Bunting. So that'll give you an idea. I assume Danny Mullins will keep the ride on Carguess, which he does. That gives you a kind of an idea of the pecking order at Closutton. Salvatore Mundi was a really interesting one, but you'd have to think that if they did really fancy him, Paul Townend would be riding him. Interesting that he goes for Storm Heart. He could have ridden the filly, who, let's face it, she's done nothing wrong in a couple of starts. She was good at Leopardstown. There's no reason why she won't improve again. But, you know, they're all much of a muchness as wheelie horses. There was very little between them at Leopardstown. There might not be much between them again. And clearly the race revolves around Sergino. If the Sergino that we saw the last time turns up, he's going to be very hard to beat. But you really couldn't back a Nicky Henderson horse at all this week. So, yeah, it's a very, very open triumph, Matt. It's a kind of a pin job, I think, really.
We're dealing with a lot of potential, Graham. A horse that really sort of captured your imagination after the DRF was Majborough, seemingly. Yeah. He did run an eye-catching race, didn't he, when he was 5-1 in that Grade 1?
And that was only his second ever run and his first run since coming from France. And I think he's probably one of the horses who'll be suited by the real emphasis on stamina. He looks a big, strong horse and a bowl jumper and a galloper. So I think he's very uncomplicated, and I think he'll run really well. But Billy's dead right. In the Grade 1 at Leopardstown, which, if we're going to sideline Sergino for a moment, that is the key galloping clue. 5 horses past the line with 2 3/4 lengths between first and fifth. So they're really, at this stage, you're looking for the ones to spring forward and improve. I think Majborough will do, but I'm minded to take 2 Mullins horses against the field here. Majborough would be one, and Carguess would be the other, because I think she's still, you know, considering she's won a Grade 1, I think she's flying slightly under the radar. And what she does have is she's a high cruiser, that field, a stalker and a high cruiser. And I think if Danny Mullins is riding, I think it makes perfect sense, because he seems to strike up a rapport with that type of smooth travelling hold-up horse, and he certainly did with Carguess at Leopardstown. So they'd be my 2. But if you're gonna think, well, I can't really go at Sergino with any confidence at the moment, they'd be my 2, and if Sergino comes out and is fit and healthy and wins, then so be it. But he is going to be such a tricky horse for bookmakers to price up now, Sergino, isn't he?
He is. He'd be a hard horse to bet, won't he, David? It'll be sort of Sergino or bust for a lot. But I've got to look at Gary Moore's horse here, the Salva. He was pretty cool on this horse in terms of running in the Triumph. We said he wasn't going to run unless he got his conditions. He is unbeaten over hurdles. How do his form figures, how do his ratings stack up against some of these Irish hot pots in the Triumph?
Yeah, I'd say, considering the reputation that Sergino has had all winter, I was a little bit surprised to see that he's only a pound clear of Cargese and Nürburgring. And Salva is a little bit further down there. Say Sergino is 162p. Salva is only on 149, so looks like does have a little bit to find there. But some of these races that he's been winning, they're hard to get a handle on, aren't they? And he's going to handle conditions, and he's likely to give it a good go from the front. But the one that interested me most is the Joseph O'Brien horse, Nürburgring. And we were talking about the Irish form and all those that all ran against each other at the DRF. Well, this horse didn't run against them there, but he has got form that ties in with a couple of them from the juvenile hurdle around Christmas time. And he was not beaten at all far behind Calaconti and Cargese there. The first three pulled clear, and I just like the way he stuck to his task. He was really rallying again in the closing stages, having just been tapped for a little bit of pace. And I think if this race is going to be a real test of stamina, which it's looking like it probably will be, he's going to be running on strongly at the finish. And I thought 10, 11 to 1, he probably had a better chance than what those prices suggest.
Yeah, he's got all that experience off the flat as well, hasn't he? As you say. Let's move on to the Mayor's Chase.
Hang on, what does Billy like in this Triumph? Is he just going to no bet it, Billy? Do you think it's too tight?
Oh, it's too tight for me, GC, especially with all the uncertainties about Sergino. I'm going to wait because of the time. Of the colours,
if this Salvatore Mundi comes and wins on his debut for Willie after 332 days off the track, that's going to be ominous. We're going to get horses who haven't even run in Ireland or Britain and haven't run for a year being lined up for novice hurdles at the festival in years to come.
Well, he nearly did it a couple of years ago with Autumn Couleur, who had never run for Willie before, almost winning a Triumph in the same colours. So it's not impossible. But like I said, a bit surprised that Paul Townend does ride him and he's gone for Stormheart instead,
Yeah, that surprised me as well. Let's look at this Mayor's Chase. Another hot pot for Willie Mullins, Billy. Dina Blue, she was battered, wasn't she? Was it the Mayor's Novice Hurdle a couple of years ago? She ran really well in second in the Grand Annual last year, trying to do a Gaelic Warrior, making third time lucky at the festival.
But she's a great chance of doing it, Matt, and obviously the betting will tell you that alone. She's been in superb heart since last year, since just getting touched off last year, when in fairness, if she hadn't walked through the last two fences, she'd surely have won. The only slight concern about her is the trip, 2.5 miles. She's been doing all her running over 2 of late. Now, she did try 2.5 over hurdles. It was a lesser grade of a race. She seemed to stay. She finished 4th. She wasn't beaten for lack of stamina. So Willie doesn't seem too concerned. If everything goes right for her, she's clearly the one to beat. The ratings will tell you that. But it's not a foregone conclusion. It's I think it's a very open contest, or it's more open than maybe the betting would suggest. There's Gavin Cromwell has 2 really interesting mares in it. Limerick Lace, who run in the same colours. She's been in great heart. She stays really well. She loves heavy ground. Bride's Hill has been in great form. And don't rule out last year's second, Allegory de Vassy, who has been a little bit up and down, but I thought she was really good at Naas the last day, dropping back to 2 miles. Again, I think ground is the key to her. If you look at her action, she just really does bend her knee. I think she wants heavy ground. So I think a lot of things have come right for her. So Dino Blue is the one to beat, but I'm just wavering slightly as we come closer to the race. I think it's a bit more competitive than I was expecting it to be,
Have you a bet here, GC?
Not really. We'll see how I'm going on the day. It's a long way off at the moment. Dino Blue trying to do what Gaelic Warrior did and make it third time lucky at the festival. It's hard to knock her, but there are, there are 1 or 2 really smart mares in there, and it's probably a more competitive race than the anti-pulse market has suggested for the last week or 2.
David, how does this race stack up in terms of the rain? Is she miles clear? Because I was looking at Allegory de Bassi. You know, she is a massive threat, isn't she? She went off a really short price last year.
That's the thing. Yeah, she's not miles clear. She's £4 clear, but it's one of those where it's worth digging a little bit deeper and looking at where the ratings come from. And the only ratings that give her this £4 to play with are the last two runs, and that's Chasing Home, El Fabiolo in a really poor time at the DRF, beating Captain Guinness, who was probably not quite on his game. So I don't think that form amounts to a great deal. And I think you can say the same about the Leopardstown win at Christmas. Again, the time figure was pretty ordinary. Dysart Dynamo fell that day. Captain Guinness was pulled up, and then she just sort of run past Gentleman Demi, who it's a long while since he's been a genuine force, who is a reliable one that you could set your watch by. So I think you can pick holes in a form. You've got the slight concern about the trip. You know, if you take the view that those best efforts have come over 2 miles, and like you say in Allegory de Basset, she's got at least one strong rival, and I don't think Limerick Lace is out of it either. So I think if you are in a bit of a hole by this stage and you're trying to take her on, then there's enough running for you to make it worth your while.
It'll be a very swift editing job if Gentleman Demi's just won the champion chase before this goes out. Good luck with that one, DJ. Let's talk Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. This is a decent sized field. It looks like there's good representation from both sides of the Irish Sea as well, GC. Captain Teague, I thought, a double figure price for Paul Nicholls. It could be a good final couple of days for Nicholls with a bit of luck. He showed real guts, didn't he, when winning at Newbury?
Yeah, it was a grueling day that day. So he won't fail for lack of courage or stamina, I don't think. And he's got festival form after a good run in last year's bumper. But I always approach this race with a ton of caution. I know Stay Away, they won it when well fancied last year, but by and large, it's a bit of a wild one, isn't it? Because these horses have not had anything like the test of stamina that they'll get in the Albert Bartlett itself. So I'm happy to leave the floor to others here. I can't say that I've delved into it too deeply. Gidley Park is going to be the shortest priced British horse. I think he looks a really good looking horse, and he travels quite smoothly, but I'm not sure he's cut out for a real grind this Friday. So I'll pass on the Albert Bartlett.
Bill, can you wrap up the Mullins team here, because it's broad and long, if that makes any sense. I'm a bit gutted for Daryl Jacob, who rode Reading Tommy wrong to win the Laws and Ace. He gave it a cracking ride that day. Obviously, Paul's come in now to take the ride as the first string in here. Is that an obvious one?
Absolutely, he is. He's a Grade 1 winner, and just even looking at him that day at Naas, you'd think the step up and trip would certainly suit him. He was stronger at the finish than at any other point in the race at Naas, so I'm not surprised to see him running here. It'll be interesting to see how Atlantique gets on in the Gallagher, but he's the obvious one to beat Reading Tommy wrong. Dancing City was impressive at Leopardstown. He seems to be going in the right direction. Willie's got a really strong team here. High Class Hero was one that has been on the radar for this race for a long time, but I do think the ground has gone against him, Matt. If you look at him in the parade ring,
oh really?
He's by Suleimani. He wouldn't be the biggest and wouldn't be the most robust horse in the world. So I think he'll be better on quicker ground. He did a lot of his winning in the kind of late summer, early autumn time. So I think the ground would be a big issue for him. The Willie horse that I do like in this race at a reasonable price is Lecky Watson. He ran a cracker in the bumper last year, wasn't beaten far. He won a maiden hurdle over 2.7. They've been running over starter trips since. He was third to Reading Tommy wrong in the Lawlers race at Naas, where he did plenty wrong. He was very keen in the early part of the race. They're sticking a hood on him. I think this trip is ideal for him. I think he'll love the ground, and at the prices, I'd be siding with him. I think Lecky Watson each way is a great bet here.
I like it. He's a tough nutter, I think, isn't he? I think I put him up for this race after the champion bumper last year, but probably double the price now, to be perfectly honest. But I know Nicky Henderson, it feels a bit like potentially wasted airtime, but Nicky Henderson speaks very highly of Shanna Bob. Says it reminds him a little bit of Bob's Worth, who obviously won this race. He was a winner in December at Cheltenham, proven over the course and distance. So another one for the home team to consider. Let's go around the panel and wrap up Friday. What's the sneaky one, GC? What's the one that you're desperate to get off your chest for Friday's action, maybe in the handicaps?
Haven't got a sneaky one. I had a good look at the county hurdle and just loads of horses that I could really like. And Favois, who won the race last year, shouldn't be 16-1 on the back of what he did in the Imperial Cup. Just nutted on the line after not going clear, but certainly opening up a gap of a couple of lengths. So he looks primed to run another really good race. And the obvious one at the top of the market. Interested to hear what Billy thinks about King of Kingsfield, because by the time this compelling podcast goes out, he might have had another significant form boost through Ballyburn. Now, he was no match for Ballyburn or Slade Steel in the Grade 1 at Leopardstown, but he does look the type of horse who could be very fairly treated, Billy, for a race like this. What do you think?
He does, and he looks tailor-made for a race like this, GC. He looks like a horse that'll really appreciate the hustle and bustle of a well-run 2-mile handicap. So, yeah, he's got a really obvious chance in that. I was very keen on Absurd, but I was kind of hoping that the ground would dry out a bit more for him. It might not be ideal. I know, Matt, you're very sweet and so Scottish, and you certainly couldn't put anyone off him the way things are going this week.
So, and Donna Myler gets the ride on him. I do like him under a lightweight. I'm not sure if he's had a Cheltenham winner, a festival winner before, but I do like Donna Myler. I think he's underrated. Yeah, that horse has obviously got really good handicap chase form with the likes of Boots Hill, and he ran okay last year in the plate, finishing 7th off 143. Somehow finds himself here off £10 lower, 133 so Scottish. I'll definitely give him a squeak. David, over to you for, you've only got the County Hurdle and the Mountain Pipe to crack for us.
Yeah, no idea really. I say No Ordinary Joe was the one that was pretty interesting, wasn't he? He knocked everybody's eye out at Kempton, and the plot was there, you know, for everybody to see what the idea was.
Apart from the stewards.
Back here, you know, for the Martin Pipe having run so well in the race last year, but you know, you just cannot really back the yard with any confidence given what we've seen so far this week, can you? So no, it'd probably be a watching brief for me in those tough handicaps. Thursday is where I'm looking forward to getting stuck in mainly.
Oh, Billy, I nearly forgot the Fox Hunters. Is it more heartbreak for Barry O'Neill on Ferns Lock as It's on the Line flies late and nabs him?
There's very little between them, but I'd be in the Ferns Lock camp here, Matt. I think It's on the Line beat him earlier on in the season. I thought he was a bit lucky on the day, and maybe just the fact that, you know, race fitness might have caught Ferns Lock on that occasion. He won well at Thurles. He was fully entitled to win since that. But again, he's a horse that just loves to get, you know, the deeper the ground, the better. I think it'll really suit him. He's been threatening a big performance for a long time. I'd love to see David Christie win this race as well, because he's gone close a couple of years. But yeah, I'd be in the Ferns Lock camp here. He's got It's on the Line as a big contender. Billaway is 12 years of age. He'll be there or thereabouts as well. But Ferns Lock for me, Matt.
And GC, finally, we are obviously looking at sort of limited data here, and it's a bit of an educated guess, but we'll wrap things up next week. But what do you think the main topic of the Cheltenham Festival, the main topic of debate might be come sort of the end of Friday's action?
Hard to say on the betting front at the moment, but just had a sneaking suspicion that financially this is not going to be a big revenue generator if the fancies keep going on. But I think overall, I didn't hear the interview with Nevin Truesdale, Jockey Club boss, on 5 Live yesterday, but I'm reliably informed that he said they're very happy with the race program. It's a bit worrying because it's not just a social media noise thing. It's not just an old-timers thing. I think there is a groundswell of opinion among real Cheltenham regulars and racing fans now that it's, you know, it's not as compelling as it used to be. Now, there's a reason for that. There's an absolutely dominant trainer and a dominant operation from Ireland. But if you keep rolling up mares races and mares novice hurdles and, you know, 3 novice hurdles at different trips and a national hunt chase and an Arkle and a Turner's Grade 1 and a Brown Advisory, you're asking for a lot of passion killers from a punting point of view. And it has to be a compelling betting product. And you don't need to perform major surgery. I think most people, and they should conduct major surveys like they did on the 5th day auction, conduct major surveys, see what they say, and then act accordingly. But don't set up a committee that's going to prepare a report this time next year and then maybe something for down the line. It's imperative that this sport reacts to the seismic change in its makeup over the last 5 to 10 years and acts with the 2025 festival in mind.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a huge amount to reflect upon in next week's podcast on Wednesday.
We're just previewing the Lincoln next week, I would
There
imagine.
you go.
Yeah.
And the Dubai World Cup.
Look ahead to Doncaster and Maidan action next week. But now, thanks to Graham, to Billy, and to David Johnson, we'll wrap up the midweek debate. Look forward to full Cheltenham wrap next week. Thanks for listening. Good luck and goodbye.
Are you Cheltenham ready? Download the Sporting Life app for the best coverage of the festival, including live race blogs, stable tours, interviews, video previews, and expert tipping.